just finished a book. It just came out yesterday. It's called Capturing the Motivation of Children with Autism or Other Developmental Disabilities. And what the book does is goes through and presents technical information in a non-technical manner. There are many parents out there and educators who really want to help children. They've got the heart. They want to help, but now they need the technical knowledge. The problem is sometimes in professions, the words turn people off. They think they know what a concept is, like reinforcement. It's a simple concept that's very, very much misunderstood. Because what I'll often do when I'm talking to a large audience, I'll pull out like a $20 bill and I'll say, is this a reinforcer? And everybody's shaking their head going, yes, yes. And I said, okay, now we got to go back to basics. Because you can't tell me if something's a reinforcer or not just by seeing it. The reinforcer is only identified after it's shown to have a strengthening effect upon behavior. But people don't realize that. So you have people describing things like they're saying, well, I had a reinforcer and I was using a reinforcer, but it wasn't working. Well, by definition, it wasn't a reinforcer. So we got to go back to the basics. So what I've tried to do, I'm writing a series of books. It's called Teach Your Children Well series. And it's based on providing technical information to people in a non-technical manner so that people who have an interest in working with children can grasp the concepts and utilize them for working with some fairly difficult children who have difficulty learning skills. So anyhow, in this book, Capturing the Motivation, what it does is it really goes through taking a look at all the variables that might affect a child's willingness to participate and go along with you when you're trying to teach them. Whether you be trying to teach them something sitting down at a table, or whether you're in the bathroom getting them ready to take a bath where you're trying to teach them some skills there. There's different conditions that you experience with the child, and we talk about it in technical terms of instructional control. Will they follow along and go along with us under a wide variety of conditions? And it turns out that it all comes back to reinforcement issues. What's the reinforcer? Do you have a reinforcer? Is it clear that you have a reinforcer that's better than what the child can get on their own for free? The last several years I've been talking about this concept called ambient reinforcement. I kind of picked that term because it kind of seemed to fit. You know, you walk into a room and you see a child with autism and they're doing something. They're not just sitting there waiting for the world to pass them by. They're actively doing something. In fact, that's what kind of drives some people nuts, is because they see the kids getting into all kinds of stuff, and now what do? We've got a behavior problem. But in reality, what the child's doing is exploring their environment. They're manipulating the environment to have some desired outcome. Maybe they're getting some certain type of sound that they make when they tap on something in a certain way. Or maybe when they put their head down and they look along the edge of something, they see a certain way in which the light's bouncing off the edge, or they're seeing the reflection in the refrigerator or in a glass of water, or they're watching the light in terms of how it's, you know, cutting through the air and maybe making dust particles move. I mean, they're attending to all kinds of stuff, and they're making things happen. They can smell things, they can taste things, they can feel things. And so they have access to stimulus change, if we call it reinforcers, that they control on their own, that they don't need us for. And now here we come along and we're trying to get them to do something for us, but they're already entertaining themselves in some way. So why should they do something for us when they're already doing something that is pretty much a little effort for them, doesn't depend upon us? And now we're coming in and we're going to ask them to do something else that might be a little difficult for them. There has to be some major difference in terms of what they can get for free versus what we have to offer them. And so I think that's where part of the time people don't understand that, and they don't understand they're competing with these ambient reinforcers. They don't control all the reinforcers. Another concept that they don't understand is the fact that motivation is switching from second to second. They may like something right now, but all of a sudden they're tired of it pretty quickly. And what people have a tendency to do is, if you're working with the child and now you're getting them to do things for you, let's say you're having them name different items on picture cards or something like that, some simple task. And all of a sudden they're working really well, and you're feeling really good as a therapist because you're reinforced by watching the child participate so well. And so you want to keep it going because you're getting reinforced for what you're doing. However, what happens is that oftentimes the parents or the teachers, people who are working with the child, will often push it because they want to keep it going. unfortunately, the motivation may be dying off for the reinforcers that they have access to. And you go from a child who's responding extremely well, paying very focused attention, giving you very quick answers, to all of a sudden it starts getting slowed down a little bit, and then all of a sudden you stop. Well, what you're ending up doing when you're ending up stopping is you're ending up stopping for not the most desired performance. So if you want to get better performance, you want to stop before it starts to taper off. Now, some of my colleagues kind of started describing it as not keeping the motivational variable on life support. In other words, if you're losing, if they're no longer, don't keep going. Stop, find another reinforcer, capture another one, so that you really get the best performance being developed, and you're always ending before the child starts to engage in escape and avoidance behavior. So there's that. There's other issues that I describe in the book that I think are very important too. You know, people are always worried about children getting hooked on extrinsic reinforcement. It used to be the M&Ms, now it could be the organically grown raisins. It doesn't matter what the trend is for the time. But the idea is you're giving them something. They're doing something for something you control. And what we find is that children on the autism spectrum, one of the major areas is a social piece. And so you've got this issue of children who may not be as responsive to social reinforcement. Praise or smiles or little change of tone of voice may not be an actual reinforcer for many of the children. Now, hopefully through our training, when we're doing it, we do it right. And that is, if we're going to use something else like music, singing, or giving them raisins, what they might do is make sure that they pair their change in their facial expression, their tone of voice, their posture even, with right before they get the other backup reinforcer, so that pretty soon the child starts to see that, oh, before I get these raisins, Jim starts to smile, he leans forward, his voice changes a little bit. That's a good thing, because it always precedes a delivery of something that the child wants. That's how you take a neutral stimulus, like our facial change, tone of voice, and turn it into a conditioned reinforcer. And there's a lot of science behind that too, in terms of how that happens. For instance, if I were to give a raisin to a child and then say, good job, well, he's eating the raisin. He's not paying attention to the words or my facial expression at that time. It's better if I, oh, you did a good job, and then I deliver it. So now he sees the change in my face and my tone of voice, and then gets reinforced. Those become important now. So these are some of the things that I'm addressing in the book, trying to lay it out for parents and professionals in a simple manner so that they understand these concepts without having to get into the subtle nuances of all the technical language that's used by a behavior analyst.
Order your copy today at partingtonbehavioranalysts.com.